Live on WFLA Now. With a specialized degree in climate, Chief Meteorologist and Climate Specialist Jeff Berardelli is pioneering the way we look at climate and extreme weather. Welcome to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by ArmorView Window and Door.
All right, welcome everybody. Glad to have you along for today's ride. Now, today we're going to be discussing the topic that is very near and dear to the hearts of Floridians and billions of people all over the world: sea level rise. We're going to discuss how it works, how much we expect to see in the coming decades. This is going to impact millions of Floridians, especially where they choose to live, and it's going to impact the value of their homes. And sea level rise will eventually cause mass migration around the planet, possibly leading to political instability. In fact, probably likely leading to it. This topic was a suggestion of my guest today, who is Val Simpson. So let me bring Val up on the screen for you. Now, Val is a part of our weather team.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, and someone who we all love here
at
WFLA.
So
that's the truth.
Jeff.
She is well loved, that is for sure. And she's very curious about climate.
That's right.
Especially because she's a mom to two lovely children. Yes. And unfortunately, and I am the dad of a lovely little girl, the next generation is going to bear the burden of climate change, unfortunately. Yes. So Val is here. Let me bring you up full, Val. Let's see you full.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Val is here to make me less boring, just to accomplish a couple of feats here. She's going to make me more fun.
Yes,
and she's also going to ask the important questions that everybody wants to know. I'm a scientist, right? But you're climate curious, so you're going to ask the questions that make me seem human.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And you're going to get me away from the whole sciencey thing and bring me down to earth.
Because one of the things, like, I love it sometimes when we're talking and we're here in the Weather Center and we're just in layman terms, and I love how you're able to explain it so that we can all understand it, including myself, because I can appreciate that you are the climate specialist. But when it comes to somebody that you said is climate curious, I don't know much, what to expect. And I a lot of the topics that we touch on, I'm always like Googling and researching about it. So definitely, this is something that really interests me as a Florida resident. And also for the reasons that you said, because I have two small children and I would want to know what the future holds in terms of a future here in Florida. So yeah, with that, oh, by the way, before I forget.
Oh, wait, I was about to say, you have a buzzer.
I have the...
All right, folks, if you want to know why she has a buzzer, sometimes I go off on a tangent and I need to be reeled in. That is it. She's gonna if I talk too much, she's gonna
I'm gonna use
interrupt
it.
me.
I'm gonna buzz it and I'm gonna be like layman's terms, please, so that we can all understand. It just went over my head.
And for those of you at home, she is genuinely climate curious. She's constantly chewing my ear off, driving me crazy. So let's do it for real. Okay,
awesome.
Okay, so shoot. What is your first? We have graphics to back it up, but what are your
I first want to understand is if you can please explain to me, because at first I couldn't even get the terminology right. I want to understand what sea level rise is and what is causing it.
All right, Val. So sea level rise is the oceans are actually rising. They've risen about 8 to 10 inches over the past little over a century or so. Some of that's due to the warming of the ocean, which expands it, right? So something that warms expands. We know that to be true. That's part of the reason. And the other part of the reason is as we warm the atmosphere and we warm the ocean currents underneath some of these big ice sheets like Greenland and Antarctica, it's kind of breaking apart the edges of the ice sheets. And so that is also adding to sea level rise as well. And so not only are we seeing sea level rise go up, but there's been an acceleration of sea level rise as well.
What would you say is the number one cause, though? What's the main factor?
It used to be expansion due to warming. The oceans have warmed about 2 degrees Fahrenheit or so, maybe a little bit more than that, over the past century.
Yeah.
But now the ice sheets are warming or breaking apart much faster, I should say, thawing and melting, and that water is sliding from the land. So let me make that clear, because I think that's something that people don't know.
Yeah.
When icebergs melt, and even ice shelves melt, they're not in the water. They are in the water. They're in the water, so they don't add, so they can melt and they don't add any more volume to the water column. It's stuff that's on land that then runs off and flows into the sea. That is what causes sea level rise. And that is taking over. That's the predominant reason why sea level rise is happening now. And it's especially going to be true in the future.
That we're seeing today. And that's my next question, because that's really what I want to talk about is, how much sea level rise are we going to see in the future?
Well, can we hold off on that? And I only say that because do we want to talk about the past first?
Let's go ahead. Yeah, if that's
I can, because I have the graphics in order here. But
let's do that. Let's talk about the past. Right, I do have to say that I did read your article on sea level rise, and I was picking some information out of that. I do realize that this has been a process that has been happening. However, since the year 2000, we've doubled the rate of sea level.
That's right.
Correct? But I'll let you go ahead and start telling me from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. It has doubled, but it was only 2.5 millimeters per year, and now it's only 5 millimeters per year. But I say only. Doubling is very, very significant. We talked about this last night. I'm going to give you an example, and this is from my pal, John Englander, who runs the Sea Level Rise Institute down in South Florida. And this is really interesting. So let's take an average-sized soccer stadium, and you put a drop of water in, and then you double that every minute. So the first minute, you put 1 drop in. You double that. The second minute, you put 2 drops.
Right.
The third minute, you put 4 drops. So on and so
Keeps
forth.
up.
How long does it take the soccer stadium to fill up?
How long does it take?
I'm asking you. How long does it take?
Should I take a guess?
Yes, you should take a guess.
10 years?
47 minutes.
What?
Yeah, because that's how powerful doubling is.
Right.
So that's why as we
Wow.
go forward and we double sea level rise every 20 years, and it'll probably be every 10 or 15 years soon, it'll start happening really quick. So for the first couple of decades, sea level rise will go up kind of gradually, but then all of a sudden towards the end of the century, it'll just start going up like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to bring up a graphic
Yes.
for you to see.
I love your graphics.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, this is from NASA, not from me.
Okay, then.
So
Don't take the credit.
This was the last ice age. Now, the last ice age maximized around 20 to 25,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And this is a look at the ice that covered the Earth. So it wasn't the whole Earth. That during an ice age, the whole Earth is not covered under ice. It's just a portion of the Earth. And the ice sheets extended down to New York City, where there was about a half a mile of ice on top of Manhattan.
Right.
You go further north towards Boston, and the rest of New England was more than a mile of ice. So take a look at Florida. You notice that brown in the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah.
That's land.
Oh, wow.
So 20,000 years ago, sea level was about 400 feet lower than it is today.
Right.
And the reason for that is because 20,000 years ago, a lot of the water in the oceans was locked up in the ice, Val. I'm
Wow.
going to
I
pull
see
this up
that.
so
Yeah.
you can see both of us there.
Yeah.
So you can see, you can literally walk 100 miles into the Gulf of Mexico, and you'd still be walking on dry land 20,000 years ago. Sea levels have risen since then, but they stabilized around a few thousand years ago. So sea level has come up 400 feet essentially since 20,000 years ago. Most of that
20,000
happened in the past 10 to 15,000 years.
Okay.
5,000 years ago, that stopped.
Yeah.
So let me show you another graphic we have here. And this shows sea level rise over the past 2,500 years. So you notice it was basically stable from 2,500 years ago until about,
Yep.
you know,
Oh, go.
let me do it one more time.
Yeah, let's
Notice
go
how
back.
it all of a sudden just shoots through
Shoots
the
up.
roof there?
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah.
And that is just over the past 100 years or so.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that graphic
So
you're looking at is,
that has
is
to
the
do with
acceleration of sea level rise.
Industrialization, for instance, right? Because since it spiked up in the last 100 years,
Yes.
I'm assuming that that's
Right.
what's causing it.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I
Yeah.
think us scientists take it for granted. The reason why climate has been changing over the past 100 to 150 years is solely because of man and our use of energy and our deforestation and the pollution that we're causing.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with natural causes. Climate change has changed naturally over hundreds of thousands of years. The reason why we have ice ages once every 100,000 years is because essentially the distance of the Earth from the sun and the orbit around it and the tilt of the Earth changes the amount of sun we get, and so therefore it changes how warm or cold the Earth is at any given time. And every 100,000 years or so, we get an ice age. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is anything not clear about that?
So the process of the icebergs melting, that's not natural. That's being accelerated.
Lately.
Okay.
Right. So the ice sheets are melting, and it's being accelerated by the process of industrialization. Us burning coal, oil, and gas. We are putting greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. That acts as a blanket. It traps the heat, and that warms Earth's temperature and also warms the oceans. And therefore, it's starting to really increase the acceleration of ice melting that's pushing into the oceans, and that's causing sea level rise. Again, there's natural climate change that happens over tens of thousands of years due to changes in the Earth's orientation to the sun, if you will. And then there is also the man-made climate change, which has been happening really just for the past 150 years. And most of it has happened in the past 40 years. Okay.
So I guess that's okay. So climate change would be happening regardless. It's just that it's being accelerated by greenhouse gases.
This is why I have you on the show.
Thank you so much, because I take what you just said.
It's really important, because I think we just take this I always take this for granted. I always think people know this stuff already.
Right.
And they don't often. Well, I shouldn't say they don't often. Some people don't. So this is a good point. Yes, climate change is being accelerated, but not by a little. Our climate changes over tens of thousands of years, not over 100 years.
Right.
We're seeing the fastest rate of temperature rise on Earth, likely we have seen in at least over 100,000 years, but likely millions of years.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's significant.
All right, and by the way, let me show you this graphic, because we were talking about sea level rise accelerating. Notice that in the late 90s, it was rising at around 2 millimeters per year.
Yeah.
And now it's closer to around 5 millimeters. From 2013 to 2022, it was 4.5 millimeters per year. So we're going to say the average is closer to 5 now, because we're at the end of that. So you can see how it's doubling. And but the truth is if you literally just took 5 millimeters per year and you multiplied it by 35 years, you would see about 7 inches of sea level rise by 2060. That's not much.
Yeah.
But we don't expect it to be linear. We expect that it's going to double.
Right.
Or more than that.
Right.
So therefore, the calculations that I did last night, and I'm going to bring in some NOAA calculations for you as well, basically show that we should see somewhere around 15 inches, give or take, of sea level rise from today through 2060 on average.
Yeah.
If in fact we see it double twice, and it should double 1.5 to twice. So 15 may be a slight overestimate.
Right.
But again, we're not taking into account the disintegration of ice sheets. We don't know.
Right.
If all of a sudden a chunk of Antarctica or Greenland will break off. And that's where sea level rise becomes really, really hard to predict.
Right. And I mean, you did say that it was just hard to predict overall. Sea level rise would be something that would be very difficult to actually, because I wanted a definite answer. I wanted to understand what's going to happen, in 2060. What are we going to see? Do I have to move? That's really what I was trying to calculate and find, and understand.
That's what most people want to know. So why don't we just go to those graphics, and then we can talk all about everything else after that.
Yeah.
All right. So let me just...
I'm surprised I didn't have to use the buzzer yet. Can I just give it a little buzz just because I haven't used it at all? And it's been...
Well, I mean...
This is what happens sometimes. I get so into it, and I just forget to buzz you.
I'm glad you like it. I'm really, and it really helps me, because I take stuff for granted. I think people know everything and they may not. So I'm glad you're here to kind of reel me back in. Right. Okay. So you want to know if you need to move. So first things first, this is forecast sea level rise by 2060. Okay. It's hard to see. There's a lot of stuff. And this was the graph I got from NOAA. But if you look at that little table there, you'll notice that by 2060, the intermediate. So, okay, let me explain what the different colors here are.
Okay.
The different colors, we don't know how fast we're going to warm, because we don't know how much we're going to emit, how much carbon dioxide we're going to emit due to the burning of fossil fuels. We may combat climate change. We may switch to EVs. We may switch to solar.
I was going to say.
Right, really quickly. And we may slow warming so much that we take a low scenario. And the low scenario is in green, right? So that would be very minimal sea level rise. And the low scenario by 2060 is about 1 foot of sea level rise. So by 2060... 35 years from now, the low scenario would be about 1 foot of sea level rise. So that would be about the lowest we would expect here in the Tampa Bay area. And this, by the way, this is valid for Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay. Okay,
Bay.
Good.
Right.
Here local. Got it.
Here local. But it can be applicable for a lot of places. It would be slightly more in the western Gulf of Mexico, slightly less in other parts of the world. It just depends upon where you live. The intermediate, which is the moderate, which is the most likely scenario, that's at 1.52 feet. And that would be 18 inches of sea level rise. However, that is measured from the year 2000. Why they do that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy, but that's what they measure it from. We've seen probably about 5 inches of sea level rise since 2000. So take 5 inches off the numbers that I'm saying.
Okay.
For today. So we'd see. So in a low scenario, we would see probably 8 inches of sea level rise by 2060. And in an intermediate scenario, we'd see about another foot. And then in a high scenario, that's over 2 feet. That doesn't seem likely, but it is possible, especially if there's instability in Greenland or Antarctica. And that's impossible. I mean, literally impossible for us to know.
Right.
It's very hard for our models to predict that something could go wrong, something could break, and then something else broke. And it's kind of like if you crack a mirror, you don't know. If you crack your windshield, it's just like cracking a windshield, right? You know there's going to be a crack, but you don't know when it...
ramifications.
That's the problem.
I am hoping though that we're able to curve it, with EVs and solar panels and everything that we're trying to help, the environment and the offset of greenhouse gases.
And I should
look at me. Look at me. I can't believe. Look at me.
It's great. By the way, I should mention why we're not looking directly at the camera is because we're right across from each other. And
I know,
it's
it's hard.
tempting
I'm trying
to look at each other than it is to look in the camera. So I apologize for the folks at home. Let me bring up another graphic here. This is going to be sea level rise by 2100. And we're going to bring it up. All right. So again, hard to see the lines, a lot of stuff on there. But if you look at the box, you can see what a low scenario is. Again, this is measured to the year 2000. So take a few inches off of it. Low scenario, we would see about another foot of sea level rise by 2100. So that's a low scenario. It's the lowest. We're not heading in a low scenario, unfortunately, right now. We're headed probably middle of the road, maybe slightly higher than that. But that could change. The intermediate is 3.76 feet. Take a few inches off that. That's over 3 feet of sea level rise expected by 2060 in the Bay Area.
2100.
2100. Yes, 2100. Thank you for correcting me. And then by, if we go a high scenario, and we hope we don't, if we reel in our burning of fossil fuels, we do what we need to do, we're not going to see 7 feet of sea level rise. That would be a worst case scenario, which it could be worse than that. You could see that some of that pink line goes all the way to 10 feet. Notice that
I saw that.
That's the uncertainty of the highest scenario. Right. And the reason why it's way up there is because we don't know if there'll be a splintering of some of that ice on. We know that we're unfortunately committed to seeing probably at least that much sea level rise in the coming centuries, if not more than that, Val. We cannot stop that from happening.
No.
We've already loaded the ocean with so much heat that it's going to be in there for hundreds of years. We are going to see that much sea level rise and more than that. There's no doubt. The question is, how fast will it happen?
Yes.
That is the big
question.
When it comes to climate change, we're not saying that it's getting too warm. We're saying it's getting too warm, too fast for humanity to adapt. Remember, we are like a cruise ship.
Right.
We have 8 billion people. It is very hard to turn on a dime. So we need time to adapt to something like sea level rise.
I think that's the main takeaway. It's that it's accelerating at a very high speed, and that's why we need to create awareness. Just because it's like you said, it's happening so fast. Right.
Yeah. One more thing, Val. I forgot to load in. There were some graphics that showed what Tampa Bay would look like with 3 feet of sea level rise. Make sure you go to our website, click on the weather link, and then go to Climate Classroom, and you'll see the latest. And it should be on our homepage right now, anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're watching this days in the future, which you might be, if you just click on the Climate Classroom under the weather links. You will see this article, and there's a visual to show the comparison between where the sea level is right now and where the sea level is going to be in when we reach 3 feet of increase. Yeah.
So tell me in layman terms, like what is it going to cost for the people that live in Tampa, the residents in Tampa that live close to coastal lines, coastal areas?
What do you mean cost? So you mean is it going to hurt the value of their home?
Yeah.
Right.
Is it going to increase insurance or,
Yeah, it's going to be almost unaffordable for a lot of people who live near the water right now. I mean, you already see insurance companies are leaving. Those insurance companies are not necessarily flood insurance companies, but you can imagine that at some point, unless we raise our roads and our homes, water's going to... For instance, nuisance flooding only happens about 5 times a year right now.
Right.
By 2050, we're expecting that it could be, and especially later in the century, it could be happening 60, 70 times a year. Literally 1 out of every 4 days.
Yeah.
Or so twice a week, we could be seeing nuisance flooding where streets are getting flooded and some of that water is getting even into homes on certain days, especially when it's stormy.
Yeah.
So... yes. Let me give you an example, Val. Okay, and you can use the buzzer if you want.
Yes.
In the Florida Keys, they have already decided, and they may change their minds, but they've decided which areas they're going to raise the roads and which areas they're not going to raise the roads. And so basically they've told people who live along roads where they've just said, we don't have the money and we're not planning on raising these roads. They've told people that those homes are eventually going to become uninhabitable, that those roads are not going to become passable, and their homes are basically not really valuable anymore.
In Key West, you said this.
Near Key West.
Near Key West,
right.
Okay.
So there are people who right now are wrestling with the fact that they may not raise those roads.
Right.
And so in, a few or a couple of decades, water would be over those roads and eventually into their homes.
Yeah.
They could raise their homes if they want, but if you can't get to their homes, then their real estate becomes, I would almost say, valueless.
Right.
But again, the Keys may change their mind about that.
Yeah.
And I'll mention one other thing. Miami Beach,
Okay.
is hitting this head on. They spent about $500 million to raise the roads and add pumps in Miami Beach, and it worked. I was living there when they were doing it.
Yeah.
Caused a lot of traffic when I was living there.
Yeah.
I was living literally in the center, ground zero of crazy sea level rise.
Yeah.
Which is partially due to subsidence there, not just due to the rise in sea level, but the sinking of the land there.
Yeah.
And also the fact that the water comes up from the ground. It doesn't come in from over the seawalls, if you will. So it's a different story there, but nonetheless, they've spent $500 million to try to remedy it. They may have to spend another $500 million or another $1 billion 30 years from now to do it again. Yeah.
Right. And essentially, what does all that infrastructure, what does it do? It pumps water.
Pumps
Can you
water
explain-
that would be on the streets.
Right.
In case there's water on the streets, it pumps it back out into the bay.
Okay.
So just kind of low. It used to, I remember being stuck in literally a foot of water, stuck in traffic. It used to, it was a problem.
Yeah.
And at one point, one of the mayors came in and said, we're going to solve this problem. And Miami Beach has a lot of money.
Yeah.
Not every community has billions of dollars to spend.
Do you think that could be something they could do here?
Yes, but not everybody is going to be the benefactor of that money because it's too much money.
Yeah.
Miami Beach, pound for pound, has a ton of money. The amount of hospitality money coming in, tax revenue, very rich people live in Miami Beach.
Yeah.
You don't have that in certain communities in the Tampa Bay area and all around the world, especially. They don't have that kind of tax revenue to build the streets up as much as they need to.
Gotcha.
Remember, this is something that's going to become a problem in the next couple to few decades. So I hate to point out any one community here.
Right, exactly.
But everybody knows who lives there. Shore Acres is one of those communities
Yeah.
on the eastern side of St. Petersburg, right along Tampa Bay, that sees nuisance flooding a lot, that knows that in the next 2 or 3 decades, it is going to start to become a very significant problem in terms of sunny day flooding, just high tide flooding, and then eventually just flooding all the time because
So any
during high tide
community that
especially.
has seen any type of nuisance
That's right.
flooding should be aware and should just stay up to date with these things such as sea level rise. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, good deal. What else do you have for me? What other graph do you have?
I'm just disappointed that you haven't been able to use the buzzer yet.
Oh my
You
God,
really-
it's because I'm so into our conversation. I think this is a lot of really good information.
I'm gonna
You haven't really gone over my head.
Okay, but I'm going to do my best to get off on a tangent this way. Okay. Maybe I'll start talking about the New York Yankees. I'm from New York, everybody, so maybe I'll start talking about them.
Yeah, that's right.
What else do I want to talk about? Well, I really just want to talk about you want to talk about. And you know what? We have a Facebook page. Let me see if anybody's asking any constructive questions. We get questions, but they're not always constructive. So let's see what we got here.
Yes.
Okay.
Or any positive comments. I didn't log in onto.
Yeah,
I didn't have it on my
right
phone.
now.
You have it on right there.
Let's see what kind of comments we have. Sometimes I'm afraid to
Yeah.
look on Facebook. We get positive comments in other places, but when it comes to Facebook, oftentimes,
Yes.
I can't even see any comments here.
I do want to mention something that we were talking about with meteorologist Rebecca Berry before we got on air. And she was mentioning how, it would be different in different areas. Not necessarily all coastal areas are going to see the sea level rise at the same time or in the same amounts. And that is due to different factors, correct?
That's exactly right. So, yeah, for instance, the western part of the Gulf of Mexico is going to see more sea level rise than the eastern part of the Gulf of Mexico.
Why is that?
I can't be 100% sure why that's the case. I will tell you that what affects sea level rise is the melting of ice. It is the expansion, so thermal expansion. It's also about ocean currents and currents that would be present in the Gulf of Mexico as well.
Right.
And it also has to do with subsidence. So subsidence is a big factor in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Again, western side of the Gulf of Mexico there. They are actually sinking. So that's causing the sea level to rise faster for them. Now let me try to get through this. This is a very interesting situation here.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So Greenland, if all of it melted, it would contribute about 25 feet of sea level rise. We don't expect that to happen anytime soon. And a lot of times when we talk about sea level rise, that would be measured in several feet or several meters. That's not going to happen for hundreds of years, we don't think, unless something catastrophic happens.
Okay.
But do you think if you're located closer to Greenland, a place where we're seeing a lot of melt,
Yeah.
that you would see a higher sea level rise? Let's say you're in Iceland,
Yeah.
right next door. Would
Yeah.
you see more sea level rise or less sea level rise?
Well, if I'm closer, I'm thinking more.
It's the opposite. It's
How
less.
is that?
It has to do with gravity.
Okay.
Because believe it or not, the ice sheets are so massive that they actually pull the sea up.
Right.
So I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's going to be it's actually a little bit too much for my brain to handle. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's That's what
Okay. But yes.
I'm not gonna go into detail about it, but if you're interested in looking it up, your proximity to large ice sheets means that you will actually see less sea level rise, and it has to do with gravity. But it's true. It's a little bit, bit too much for this discussion.
No, that's all I need to know. The further you are, the more at risk you are. Then, okay, that's it.
I think people are going to have one thing that's going to come up pretty often.
Yeah.
Let me go a little further. Is this right here? Let me bring this up. So this is Thwaites Glacier. It's probably one of the most precarious glaciers in the world. We call it the Doomsday Glacier because it contains. I don't like that. That general area contains around 3 feet of sea level rise if it were to completely disintegrate. And that whole area, so the western part of Antarctica is somewhere around 8 or 9 feet of sea level rise if it were all. If one of those glaciers, if one of those ice sheets or glaciers becomes unstable, Thwaites being one of them, then the other glaciers around it also become unstable too. So there's a buttressing effect. Actually, you know what, Val?
Yeah.
We can talk about this.
Let's see.
Let me put this up full screen.
Okay.
Let me show you what's going on with Thwaites Glacier. Okay?
Yes.
So there's Thwaites. Uh-oh. Well, let's listen.
Oh, wow.
It's going to play again. So let's play it one more time, I think.
Okay.
There it
yes.
is. Okay.
I totally got the concept. It's almost like if you were to pour a drink in a glass and then you add ice, the volume goes up.
Right.
So that's basically what's happening.
If the ice in your glass melts, it won't go up anymore because it's already in there.
Right.
You get it? So what's happening here is the ice shelves are part of the ice shelf is already floating on the water.
Yeah.
If that melts and disintegrates, it's not going to raise sea level, but it acts as a buttress for what's behind it. It's almost like pulling a cork. You pull the cork out.
Buttress.
Oh, buttress is too much for this discussion. See, now I disagree with that.
Okay,
Judges,
that's good.
Judges.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think that was...
I'll let you have it. I'll let you have it. Okay.
But it's like pulling a cork out.
Okay.
If the ice shelf disintegrates, which is starting to happen. So there cracks are developing. We're seeing this from space.
Yeah.
We're seeing this in the research. There was a paper that just came out a couple of weeks ago, basically saying that the amount of warming is baked in, meaning we're going to see 3 times the amount of warming at a rate 3 times what we have already experienced in that area, and that's just going to keep kind of melting the ice there and making these glaciers more unstable.
Yeah. So that's going to continue happening. It's not going to stop. It's not something.
And I think this is important to mention. People are so in terms of when we expect the whole glacier to fall into the water.
Yeah.
First of all, we don't know that's certainly going to happen, but we think that it's probably not preventable at this point. So much heat has been stored in the oceans. Do you know we're storing about 15 Hiroshima bombs worth of heat in the ocean every second?
Wow.
Every second, the amount of excess energy being stored in the ocean right now is about 15 Hiroshima bombs. I could do the math, but it's millions over the course of a year. So it's a lot. So all that heat is building up, and it gets stuck in the Earth's system for hundreds of years, actually. And so it will keep kind of, unfortunately, destabilizing underneath those ice sheets, and that's why we think we're committed to several feet, if not more, of sea level rise. Some people would argue we're committed to 20+ feet of sea level rise, but that doesn't happen this century. It happens centuries in the future. 2, 3, 5, 10, we don't know.
Yeah.
But somewhere in that.
Right.
Ballpark.
Right.
Yeah.
So what should we do in order to try to help the situation?
That's a good question. So like I said, we need to slow the rate of sea level rise. That's what we need to worry about. We know that we can't stop the sea level from rising for future generations, but we need to slow it such that we have a chance to adapt. There are billions of people, around 8 billion people live on the earth. but billions that live close to sea level. Once, especially in poorer countries, once those people can't live in their homes anymore, they will start to migrate. And we're already starting to see that happen from extreme weather events and to some small degree from sea level rise. But we're going to see that happen more. And that mass migration is going to destabilize. And it's not like we needed the world to be any less stable than it is right now, right?
Yeah.
So that is a big problem. Climate migration is going to be a big problem in the future. And it's going to affect the poorest of the poor people the most. But it's going to affect all of us because when the value of our homes start to go down, and for a lot of people, the value of your home is your biggest asset.
Yeah.
Our savings start to go down, and to maintain the same type of lifestyle that you have right now, which is what you want for yourself and also for your children, if not better for them.
Yeah, better.
It's going to become very difficult because it's going to become very costly to keep battling climate change. So
Right.
the bottom line is what we can do is slow the rate of climate change.
Yes.
The way that we do that is that we try our best to, as fast as we can, but with as limited interruption as we possibly can have, meaning that it may not happen overnight, reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we use. That is just simply it, and stop deforesting the earth and try to reforest the earth. Add more trees so that we can suck the carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere. Those two things are the remedies to climate change because climate change is being caused by the amount of carbon dioxide and methane that we are putting into the atmosphere. We just have to curb that as much as we possibly can.
I think that's doable. I think that if we all put in a little grain of salt, we can accomplish.
You said a grain of salt?
Grain.
Oh, a grain of salt.
A grain of salt. I think that it's.
I've never heard
I think
that
that
before.
it's doable. And then also, so basically, is this something that we should worry about for our children, for Gracie, Nico, and Leo?
Yeah, I do think so. I think that our generation, we're going to have to deal with inconveniences, me and you, especially me. You are younger than me, so you may actually have to deal with some of the real meat and potatoes of this. We're already starting to have to deal with them. And look,
Great.
insurance companies are flocking away from our state right now. It's not just because of climate change, but believe me when I tell you, it is a part of it. And so we're already starting to, it's hitting the bottom line, it's hitting our wallets, right? You can only imagine what that's going to look like 20, 30, 50 years from now. I might be on death's door by the time that's happening, but my daughter hopefully won't be, right?
Yes.
And your children will be alive and well, and hopefully we will have already done our best to solve the problem by then. But yes, this is going to be a very big burden to our children, and it's not going to be the next generation. It is literally this generation right now growing up that's going to have to deal with this.
And lastly, I do want to close with this because I always think about, the islands, Cuba, Puerto Rico, being Latina, and our, the community that we cater to here in Noticias Tampa Hoy. What does sea level rise mean to these communities in these areas?
It's going to be the same no matter where you are, right? Now, there are going to be places that rise a little bit more than others, but I wouldn't say that Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Caribbean are more at risk than, let's say, the Tampa Bay area.
Okay.
So it's probably pretty similar. I'd have to look at the numbers, actually. And actually, you can. If you go to that article that I wrote.
Yeah.
In fact, let me bring it.
Let's
let me
pull
bring
it
up.
Yes.
It's not called exactly this, but it's basically Sea Level Rise 101, and it's on our website on WFLA.com. If you go to the website, you are going to be able to find a link to NOAA, where you can actually click on the map and look at sea level rise 2060 and through 2100 and beyond. And because Puerto Rico and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands are U.S. territories, you can find predictions for that area as well, not for Cuba. But it's going to be similar. The bottom line here is there are a lot of very low-lying areas in the world. Yeah. It's especially a problem in the global south where there are a lot of poor people. If you go to Bangladesh or India, there's very low sea level rise. And they're going to probably feel the effects first. And a lot of these Pacific islands, these small Pacific islands, they may completely be underwater in the next 20, 30, probably it's closer to 30 to 40 years, 50 years. It's conceivable. They're very worried about it. Yeah. It's an existential threat for those communities that are very close to sea level.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Okay. Well, I think you answered a lot of my questions. I learned a lot today in our climate classroom. Any last thoughts or anything I didn't ask you that you think would be worth sharing?
I think you liked the end of the article, which basically said, we don't know exactly. We really don't. We really don't know exactly how much sea level rise we're going to see. We can extrapolate it linearly, right? And we know that just based upon how much we've been seeing, well, we're going to see at least another 6 to 7 inches by 2050, 2060. That is going to happen, right?
Yeah.
We're pretty sure it's going to more than double or even triple. And so where it really becomes very tough, and it's really hard, which is why you see low scenarios at like 1.5 foot and high scenarios like 7-8 feet by 2100.
Yeah.
We don't know when these ice sheets in Antarctica and in Greenland will become unstable. It's really hard for our computer models to predict. Hopefully in the next decade or so, computer models will get so good, really understand the micro and macro processes that kind of dictate. That didn't get a buzz, a micro and macro processes?
No,
that dictate?
microprocesses I can understand.
Okay, all right. But hopefully computer models will get better and be better able to model this.
That's great.
Right, so I'll just be honest, we don't know for sure. I don't know when and if you'll have to sell your house at all. But I do know that it's something you should be thinking about in the coming decades.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Good deal, Jeff. Yes. Thank you.
All right. I want to say one more time, I want to plug my article on WFLA.com. Please check it out. It has some extra information that we did not cover during the day today. Of course, I want to thank Val for this. Val, our conversations are always wonderful.
Watch or listen to Jeff's Climate Classroom, powered by Armor View Window and Door on WFLA social media platforms, and find Jeff's climate reports on WFLA.com.